Go.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the school committee meeting this evening, February 27th. It's about 7:04 p.m. Before we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, just wanted to take a few seconds to honor and acknowledge with compassion the families in Parkland, Florida, with the experiences of the last couple weeks that have unraveled. So just a moment to think about that. All right, so with gratitude then for the community that we find ourselves in, I'd love to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So at the start of all of our meetings, we have an opportunity for citizens to share any questions or concerns. Are there any questions or concerns this evening? No. Okay. No adjustments to the agenda that I'm aware of. All right, so Chair's report, just some brief items. As always, I look to our rich website representing all of the different buildings to see what's coming up. And so looking a little bit ahead, the Foundation for Belmont Education annual fundraiser is set for March 17th at 7 p.m. It's going to be held at the Belmont Hills School, as it has in the last few years. And just of note, the early bird ticket pricing ends tomorrow, so you've got another day and a half to get your tickets if you have not already. And there's also a place, if you are not able to attend, to donate to the wonderful organization that in turn then brings so much into the classrooms in all of our school buildings. So wanted to highlight that. There are numerous events happening with our visual and performing arts departments. I'm not going to go through them all, but there are concerts at the different schools that will be happening, particularly at Chenery and at the high school. So I would encourage everyone to look onto the website, the district website or the school websites, to find out those specifics. And then wanted to note a couple of lectures that both focus on resilience and resiliency. So we've got one happening on the 28th, so tomorrow, here at the Chenery Middle School with Dr. Ellen Broughton. I hope that's how to pronounce her name. Mm-hmm. It's titled Building Resiliency in Kids with Learning Difficulties. And then about another week later, actually exactly a week later, we have Rachel Polliner, who's worked with our district now for several years, providing a lecture titled Promoting Resiliency in Young Children and Teens, and that will be held at the high school auditorium. So the topic of resilience has been on our minds a lot in the last couple of years around the social emotional learning work that we've been doing, and I think it's a very timely topic, period, for everyone growing up young and old. So it's nice to have a couple of different opportunities for folks. And then I just noticed early release days. We're heading into the season for more conferences, so starting next week there will be a couple of early release days following week after week, so please check your school calendars to make sure that you're aware of your children's release times. So that's all that I have. No student representatives here this evening, so I turn it over to Superintendent Taylor.
Thank you. Just want to address the Parkland, Florida shooting, school shooting as well. As our parents know, we have sent out several emails regarding what we do at the school and our ongoing training with our police and fire departments, and we very much value the training that they provide us and the training that they do as first responders, and the support that they give our public schools and the safety that it brings to our schools and our school community. That training is ongoing. It will move through this spring, and it will move through next year. And I think with every situation that happens across the nation, our first responders do a great job of learning, reflecting, and bringing new strategies forward that only become more supportive and more helpful to keeping our students safe in school. So that work is ongoing, and we thank all of our town departments, including the Board of Health, who is working with us as well. As stated in our emails to parents and for our community who are watching who are not parents, we do a lot of good work around social emotional learning in our district, and the proactive work we do to build relationships with students and families and teachers and students and students and students and administrators and teachers together working to make sure that all students are known to us, that there's support provided to them, This is ongoing work, but creating a culture where every student is known and every student is provided support where they need it goes a long way in creating relationships that hopefully create safe and resilient students. So we work to that end every day in our district, and we think that that's the long-term good work that the district can go through. As it relates to the walkout day that is scheduled nationally on March 14th, I have spoken with Principal Richards at the high school and Principal McAllister here at the middle school. They both will be reaching out to students and teachers to talk about how they want to organize and support that work on that day at that time. That's a predetermined time on our March 14th. I believe it's from 10 to 10:17 a.m. We will be working to make sure that the students have voice and have some advocacy on behalf of themselves around this issue, but also doing it in a controlled and safe manner. You know, at this school we have 1,400 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So having 1,400 students exit the building without supervision and without planning wouldn't be a safe and appropriate way in which we could hold that type of event. So Mr. McAllister will be working with the teachers and the students to figure out what that could look like here at the Chenery, given how many students we have and the timing involved. Principal Richards will be doing the same with the high school to ensure that there's educators and students at the table to decide what that will look like. But after speaking with the police chief and the fire chief, we also have to think of this as an event that should be measured and safe. So we will be working with the police and fire department to ensure that the campus is safe when we have students exit and show their voice and come back in. So I will be sending out a letter to all parents outlining what I just said and letting them know that the work will be organized over the next week, and we'll let people know the plans moving forward. We are thinking about, and I say this out loud so our parents and community members can think about this as well, we may not be inviting the public or parents to these events because we already have so many students involved that managing this in a way that would be safe and orderly might be more difficult if we had community members or parents or people from across any other kind of a community want to come and take part. So we're going to analyze that and figure out whether or not we have an invitation to the public or not. We think this is going to be a school event with our educators and our students in providing them that opportunity. So this letter will go out to our parents tomorrow, and then we will follow up with our principals on Thursday at our next scheduled meeting, and then we will follow up with information to each individual building's group of parents to let them know what's happening with their students on that day at that time. I have received a few emails asking what the next steps are, and will students be punished, and how will it work, and we are collectively working together to make this something that will be a learning opportunity for our children, but a safe and orderly one at the same time. And as Chair Fiore stated, our thoughts and prayers are with all the families, students, first responders that had such a hard experience just about 10 days ago. Shifting into different news, I wanted to bring to the attention of the school committee that we are at that point of the building program where we're looking at the fields and the massing of the building, and then the impact of parking and the playing fields that we have, which has entered into a conversation about whether or not we would like to partner with the committee that is involved with the ice skating rink. That conversation has been renewed in the last month. The last we spoke with the committee from the ice youth hockey folks was a couple of years ago, and then when we began the new process of identifying a site for the school, we let them know that we would bring them on board quickly to talk about how their proposal may fit into the site. So several meetings have happened, and some of those decisions that need to be made should be made here at the school committee table. So I bring this up tonight so I can let you know that I will be asking Bob Mulroy from the ice skate, the youth hockey, Belmont Youth Hockey and the Ice Skating Rink Committee to come and present to us at our next meeting in March. I think it will be really important for this committee to see what the site location proposal would look like, the beginning of the details that will be in the proposal that will be a public-private partnership, and exactly the kind of amenities that will be provided if this group is successful in convincing us that it's good for the school system and the town to put a new rink on that site. There will be choices involved with that, whether or not we'll be able to hold all the fields that we currently have on the site, or something might have to move. So we definitely want to have that dialogue in public with the camera rolling and our community watching, so we can have a transparent conversation. So I look forward to that as well. So I will ask Robert to come to our March meeting, but I wanted to give you that information before that date, so you are aware of that conversation. I believe Kate was at one of the meetings that we had, and we had a meeting just last week as well. I think the goal of the group would be to get an audience with the school committee, and then eventually an audience with the Board of Selectmen, so they can see how this proposal would fare at this table before they move forward. And all of it's good things for the town, but they're complicated when it comes to municipal work and how they have to go through certain stages of the work to have it be complete. So we'll hear from them in our meeting in March. There is a whole lot of good news going on out in the world of Belmont and the Belmont schools and community, and you just laid out some of it, but I have to say that I always talk about sports a lot, and you always do the music and the arts, so I guess we'll keep that going. I have a whole list of athletic accomplishments, but I'll only give you two. We have two student athletes at Belmont High School who are the best in the state at what they do, and they're getting ready to go to the Nationals. Anush Krafian is #1 in the 55-meter hurdles in the whole state, and Calvin Perkins is #1 in the 600-meter run. And I don't know this because Jim Davis emailed it to me, but my sister-in-law, my niece, is the #3 miler in the state. And so while they were watching, they said, "There's 2 Belmont students who are doing unbelievable." So I got the whole thing via text live on Saturday afternoon at my house, and it was great to see the Belmont students doing well and my niece doing well at the state tournament. So we're so proud of the work that they do. We do have teams that are representing Belmont in postseason play as well, and we'll give everybody an update on that at our March meeting. I know that we wanted to have Janice speak quickly about our SEL events that were mentioned by Lisa. So Janice, is there, want to give us an update?
Just to add a little bit more, the one that's tomorrow night is, as you said, Dr. Alan Bratton, and focusing on kids with learning and attention difficulties and how to help them become as resilient as they can be. And then next week we actually have 2 nights. One is specifically for elementary on March 6th, and then for secondary, middle, and high school families on March 7th. Although if you can only come to one versus the other, the only difference will be in sort of the stories and the examples we share. But at both nights we have teachers who are part of our SEL steering committee who will be there to present what does this look like in their classrooms and in their schools. So we have elementary educators coming on March 6th and middle and high school educators coming on March 7th. And the goal is to, we've actually fine-tuned the title a little bit, and we'll be sending out an email soon, promoting aspirations and achievement at school and at home. So really helping students develop the self-management and interpersonal skills to be self-motivated, self-disciplined, set effort goals, all good things. So we're very excited to bring that. And as you said, it's working with Rachel Polliner, who's been working with us since 2015. And what's so valuable about her work is that she works not just with me and the principals, but with the teachers who are on the committees, building the capacity and the understanding to learn and grow, and then bring that to their colleagues in their schools. So we're excited to bring that to the public next week, and that one will be at the high school. One tomorrow night is here in the Chenery Auditorium.
So I'll finish with the work that we do around SEL, the partnership we have with BASIC for some of our parent speaker series, in that we do as a school system by ourselves, is only possible because of the foundation for Belmont Education. I just reviewed the grants that were submitted by our staff for the next round of the grant cycle that the foundation provides teachers that go directly to them in their classrooms and their students. So it's not a coincidence that almost every meeting we could talk about the value that the foundation provides to the students and the teachers of this community. Their event on March 17th is a huge piece of their fundraising mechanism to support students and teachers in Belmont Public Schools. I encourage folks to attend. It's a great time. It's a great night. It's a good social event, and it goes to a good cause, and if you can't make it, to be able to donate, it goes a long way. It's one of the most successful nonprofit school supporting groups in the state, with so much money going right back to the classrooms, and it's evident in what teachers and students are able to take part in each day. So thank you to the foundation. Please support the foundation and go on their website, order a ticket or donate. It truly goes right back to your community and to your child in your classroom, so thank you.
Great. All right. So no unfinished business to attend to. The first item of major business is to vote on the 2018-19 school calendar, which is in our packets as Exhibit A. Are there any questions or concerns? I was not present when this was presented in its first, in our first conversation about it. So if anyone has any questions that have evolved over the last couple weeks, now's the time. So just to point out, as drafted, the first day of school would be September 5th, Wednesday, and the last day of school, barring, depending on snow, of course, would be June 21st. A full, vibrant year.
And as we stated last week, this is in line with the policy we have for when we start around Labor Day. It's in line with that policy as well.
I think too, there may be a difference on the Wednesday being an early release this year.
Right, so that's
the only.
Thank you, Susan. That's the one change from the previous year's, the current year's calendar is that the professional development day is on the first day of school. So that first Wednesday will be an early release day. We'll have your kids for half a day and then we'll give them back to you.
Perfect. Great. All right, so if there are no questions or any discussion anyone wishes to have, is there a motion to accept the calendar for the 2018-19 year? Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Thank you. And this, I assume, will get posted.
Yes.
We'll take the draft language off and we'll get it on the website.
Excellent. So people can start planning now. Terrific. So then our next item of business, Exhibit B, is to approve the performing arts trip to Ireland, Dublin, Galway, and Limerick. Never been. So again, any questions, comments? There are none.
No.
Motion to accept as proposed. Terrific. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are breezing
I
through.
will send that to Harto and Sean.
If I knew any daylight, I would say something, but I didn't. All right. Then, do we need to acknowledge any of the?
We usually do that at the end, but we can do that right now if you'd like.
That doesn't,
I think it's on the end of the agenda.
so let's do that then.
Okay.
All right, so then our next item will be the budget presentation. We have our exhibits in front of us.
So if it's okay with the group, I'll do this from my seat. There's not a big audience here, and I can maybe do so more comfortably from here. Before we start the presentation on the FY19 school budget, I would like to thank our Director of Finance, Tony DeCollegiero, and his staff, who have taken full responsibility and put in a tremendous amount of work for all the fundamental documents and work that make up this budget that you have here in front of you. So for the folks at home, this is the full budget with all 700 some odd budget lines in it that represent not just the general fund budget, but what we call the all-in budget, which represents all the grants and other outside funding that are available to the Belmont schools, like in most schools in the Commonwealth. We also have, that will be posted online after we present this tonight and on Thursday night, this full presentation will go up online. And that we also like to provide is a executive summary, if folks want to read something a little bit shorter that encompasses a narrative of the budget, the process, and the outcomes. We will post this online as well. So this is light reading, medium reading, and awful heavy reading. So we are scaffolding the budget process for our community members and our parents. We will go through the budget tonight, and this will be the practice run, so we can present this draft 1 budget. We will not be voting the budget tonight. We're just putting what we believe are our hopes and expectations for funding for next year. This has been worked on alongside the town administrator and her team, and we will present this budget again on Thursday night at Town Hall at 7 o'clock in the Board of Selectmen's room. And the town administrator, Patrice Garvin, who we met here at one of our last meetings, will present the town budget. So that comprehensive joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the warrant committee will happen at that time. I look forward to your feedback. Thank you for the folks. I did email this out last week in a draft version. This is a little bit shorter than the one that I sent out to you, but the numbers are the same and the outcomes and asks are the same. So if you have any questions, please let me know. We broke the budget process up into 3 different sections in this presentation. One is how we use fiscal 18, which is the year that we're in right now, to inform next year, which is fiscal 19. We'd like to talk about the context of our expenditures, the context of the revenue that we experience as a school department, and a little bit of our budget history and the current status. We'd then like to talk about, in the next section, our enrollment and class size issues. Those are the biggest drivers when it comes to our budget, and the needs that we have truly are based on the continuation of increasing enrollment in the Belmont Public Schools, and we'll show you some of that data tonight. And then the third part is our planning process and how we like to not only attach our and align our budget allocations to our strategic plan, but also to our budget objectives. And we do outline at that point in time some of our cost drivers, financial highlights, and technical assumptions. So that's the table of contents for the slides that you're about to see. We always like to say that the context of our expenditures are rooted in some of the major pieces of our budget. One of the biggest pieces of our budget by far is our salaries. We have negotiated memorandums of understanding with our 5 unions as it relates to their contracts for the next 3 years. Those have been agreed to within the financial task force model financial expectations, so we're happy to say that that agreement is in place, and we look to ratify those contracts very soon. And we're thankful to the unions and thankful for that work being done and completed, and we look forward to voting that as a school committee, hopefully at our next meeting. But we did hear previous to this year that this negotiation would be very important for our financial health, and we're thankful to the teachers union and the school committee members who bargained that we were able to stay in those parameters set forth by the financial task force. As always, we monitor our financial commitments and responsibilities in the current year that we're in, because that helps us pave the way for next year. So we did take a look at our second quarter report at our last meeting. We are in line in a very general way to finish our year successfully and have a balanced budget in June. And the other big budget driver that we have is our financial commitment to our students on IEPs, especially as it relates to our students who are out of district. And that has been a line that we've always wanted to make sure that we fund appropriately, and at times has been concerning to the budget bottom line. And we really feel confident that we have guiding principles that we've been using as a district to support that work, and we are in those guidelines right now, so we're thankful for that work as well. We always use our zero budget-based meetings with our leadership council to guide our strategic plan and our allocations. So just in general, as a school district, if we were a school district that just had the same amount of students this year as we will have next year, and we were just moving everybody forward, we're very thankful to say that the increase that we'd be looking for would be only about 3.7%, which is a very traditionally appropriate figure for a district the size of Belmont. That's not the whole story, but that's the beginning of the story, that we feel like everything that we're doing to be financially sound with our budget is working under certain circumstances, and we'll talk about the rest of the circumstances in a few minutes. When we start to talk about revenue as what makes the district tick and how do we fit as it relates to other communities, I always think it's important that we give this data on the per pupil expenditure that we have in Belmont as it relates to our nearby districts. These are the districts that we like to compare ourselves to: Acton, Boxborough, Arlington, Bedford, Brookline, Burlington, Concord, Carlisle, all the way down to Watertown, Wayland, Waltham, Westwood. They're all the same size, and in past experiences, we've always identified ourselves with those districts. When we start to talk about revenue and how we compare to those districts on a per pupil expenditure basis, it's very concerning that we always end up at the bottom of that list. This list is generated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. This is an apples-to-apples comparison of the funds spent by each district on a per-child basis. And it really gives districts the ability to really look at where they stand as it relates to the revenue that they have access to support their students. So when we look at the list of these districts, you can see when we put the first 15 on the chart, we're not to be seen. When we put the next group on, we're at the 25th. So we spend, as of fiscal 16, $13,349 per student, and that is 25th out of 27 with the districts we like to compare ourselves to. When we start to compare ourselves to the state, when you look at this list and this table, the first or the top half shows that the state average for per pupil expenditures at the state level is $15,511 per student. In Belmont, we spend $13,349 per student. The delta per student is $2,162. So we are working the best we can with revenue that is $2,000 less than every single student across the state. If you do that same comparison with all those districts that we just showed you, that we like to compare ourselves to, they spend about $18,000 per student on average. And again, we spend $13,349. That's a $4,600 per student difference. So just to put it in perspective, if we in Belmont were spending just the state average for the 4,700 students that we're responsible for, because we are responsible for just over 4,700 when we include all of our students. I know this sounds like a really big number, but it's a $10 million delta. 4,700 times 2162 is $10,161,400. So I know that we're not going to ask anybody for $10 million more dollars, but this does set the context that we are operating our school district what I would consider to be responsibly, but with our allocations, but very much at a deficit when it comes to the revenue that's available to us, that's available to other districts across the state. So just to kind of give everybody the context. When you look at that as it relates to a different type of graph, we can see that, and we just got the FY17 data in just yesterday, so we will plot that data for the time that we get to town meeting. But those lines that we see here, this is only going up, this is only going up, and we're still trying to play catch up. So that gap, as it looks at the trending lines, seems to continue. So we will make do with what we have, but we bring this to the community's attention because what we're working with is substantially less than what's being worked with at surrounding communities. So when we look at how we work our fiscal 18 budget to inform our 19 budget, we have benefited by tremendously the override in spring of 2015. These positions were allocated over the last 3 years in fiscal 16, 17, and 18. We are in the third year of that override plan. So we have benefited by 10 teachers in year 1, 5 teachers in year 2, 5 teachers in year 3. And that is all we planned for at that point in time. So that $3.5 million override number was supposed to get us through this year. We are fortunate that we're, as a town, planning and trying to get more years out of that override money that we hope lasts through fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, which are the next 2 years. But we really only allocated positions for the first 3 years because that's all we thought we had money for. So we are really thankful that we've been able to be fiscally sound and that the town has been able to be fiscally sound. But the positions that we put in place in that fiscal plan we only did for 3 years. So we are proposing new positions for next year that are the beginning of another 2-year plan that we would like to put in front of the community in conjunction with our town administrator. Keep in mind, when we were running the numbers for that override, we were using numbers from 2014 and 15 to get ready for that. So those enrollment numbers are now pretty old. So we were trying to staff our schools 3 years ago with what we thought our enrollment might be right now. We're realizing very quickly, and we'll see from some of the slides that we show, that that enrollment is absolutely outpacing in real time what we thought was going to happen in 2015 when we looked at this override number and what the student population would be. So I bring that to your attention because our staff to student ratio continues to be low because the amount of students coming into the district is growing faster than the amount of teachers that we're bringing into, new positions that we're bringing into the district. We are thankful in the second bullet for the infusion of funding for our student services costs as it relates to our special education needs. And it's very, very apparent that our students benefit by, and our teachers benefit by, our principals and our directors being able to have the financial support through instructional materials, supplies, and textbooks, and e-book subscriptions to support students in the classroom that has not been interrupted by freezes and having to provide money to other lines of the budget and take it out of those lines. So we're very, very thankful that that's still the case in Belmont while we're in that third year of our override year. We are on track to meet all of our needs this year, but number 7 shows us that we really are experiencing and continue to experience external pressures around enrollment, increased class size, space needs that we're addressing through operating and capital procurements, health insurance, which we'll outline momentarily, and also funds that we need to dedicate to our custodial overtime and substitute teachers moving forward into next year. So this is definitely foreshadowing the big bumps that are in the budget that we're going to show you in a few minutes. I think our community is well aware of our enrollment concerns and experiences over the last few years, but it's important to make sure that as this document stands alone on the website, and for folks that are new to our community or tuning in recently, we need to update them on the enrollment concerns we have. So to go through this material quickly, and this will be on the website, this is the chart that we generated a few years ago when we began the override to start to track the enrollment that we see net new to the district over time. And you can see since the 2011 October 1 report, we have received an additional 631 students over those last few years. We project that number to go up beyond 4,700, and this is inclusive of the new building projects that we have coming on. Our current enrollment, including pre-K and out-of-district students, is 4,703 students at this time. We have asked, and we talked about today at our finance meeting, that the outside demographer, McKibben Associates, do an updated enrollment projection for us. We will give him all the updated numbers that we have and let him project out another 5, 10, 15, and 20 years to see if these numbers that we're projecting are still on target or more. We have had conversations at this table that we believe that we'll be a 360 student per grade district in the next few years after the bubbles settle. But we are concerned that that could be a 370 or 375 number. So we are asking the professionals to weigh in on that, and we'll get that report back in a few weeks, and we'll share that with the committee as well. This is another look at that data, just in a bar chart form. And I think people who are not familiar with the work that we do in the district, what have you been doing about this increase in enrollment over the last few years? For space purposes at the school level, we've added modulars at the high school, middle school, and we will do so at the elementary level next year. This year alone, the one that we're in, 17-18, we've added a kindergarten, first grade, and fourth grade teacher. We've added another bus to our fleet to now have 8. We've had to add incremental ESL teachers and nurses and special educators for mandated services, on top of the additional partials, art, music, PE, and nursing and guidance that we've added to our complement of staff. The average year of graduation cohort size is now 349, and the range of our grades is between 303 and 388. The 388 is sitting right at that 3rd grade mark. So right now, our three biggest grades are 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. So we believe that that high water mark is right now getting ready to move through our middle school and move up to our high school. But when that high water mark leaves us in 7 or 8 years, we're going to be left with a new water mark of between 360 or more students in the district. That is the projection of the professionals that we work with. To give you quick looks at our district by level, we added 27 new students from last year to this year. Again, these are October 1 to October 1 numbers. 62 at our middle school and 34 at the high school, totaling 123 as the official count. We do know that number is higher right now because more students have come in since October 1, but we use the October 1 number because that is the state's marking point for all districts to submit that data to DESE. At the elementary level, as you look at these cohorts, you see that our kindergarten in 2016-17 was 350. This year, our kindergarten was 320. This kindergarten, when it went from kindergarten to 1st grade this year, grew by 23 students, just in kindergarten alone. So this shows you, the diagonal shows you how one grade has gone from grade 1 to grade 2, or grade 2 to grade 3, or grade 3 to grade 4. And then it also just shows you how our grades are populated by enrollment. The next slide shows you how many of the classes at each of our grade levels are in excess of the school committee guidelines for class size that we have set. At the kindergarten level, 13% of our classes are above those guidelines. At the 1st grade level, some would consider the most important grade of the 13 you have in a public school, 56% of those classes are above the guidelines that we set for ourselves in Belmont. 40% of our classes in 2nd grade are above that mark, 41% are above that mark in 3rd grade, and 25% are above that mark. Despite the fact that at the bottom we show you that we actually made some progress by adding 3 classrooms to the elementary level, that we only have 35% of our classes above that mark. As we discussed in finance this morning, any one class over that mark is a concern. So having 35% of your classes be beyond the class size guidelines of the school committee is a concern to our school system. When we go to enrollment for the middle school, you can see that last year we had 348. That 348 became a 361. That 342 became a 343, et cetera. And we picked up that big 371 in 5th grade. So again, 5th grade, 4th grade, and 3rd grade are the 3 biggest cohorts right now we have in the district. These are the sections that are above the guidelines at the middle school. And please remember, for our parents and our community members, when we talk about middle school, 5th grade is similar to elementary, where students are stagnant. They stay with just 2 teachers. They don't move like they do at the high school or in the older middle school grades. So this means that 49 of the 57 5th grade classes are above the class size guidelines that we have in the district. In grades 6, 7, and 8, and as you'll see in the high school, it's really hard to look at class size because the students move by team and they move by grade, and the class size goes up and down. So when we look at the ranges and the averages, we still have classes that are above the class size limits when we look at our ranges. It's just a different measurement, but the end game is that we do have high class size in grades 6, 7, and 8 at the middle school as well. Here is the chart that shows the data on the top and the line graph showing our middle school enrollment data continuing to go up. It is projected to be at 1,578 students in the 2024-25 school year. That is a sizable increase. When we get to our high school, we start with the same type of page. We now have every level of the district has 300 or more students in every grade. Remember, the high school has the last of the smallest grades that we are seeing, and the wave is going through. They are up from 1,264 students to 1,298 students. When we look at some of the class size data to take samples, I look very much in this middle and look here and say that there's about 27% of our students are in classes that are above 25 or above 30. When we look at this 47%, you know, that I wonder how many are on that higher 25, 26 side. So, you know, this number in the ranges here are concerning and really hitting our high school as well as our middle school and elementary as it relates to class size. Class size is not only how many students are in the class at one time, but class size also hits us as it relates to teacher workload. Some of our teachers, if they have 4 or 5 classes of 24 or 25, they have now caseloads of over 125, 130 students. When you're thinking about feedback as an English teacher, or the writing that's involved in our social studies classes, or the lab reports to correct as a science teacher, or the number of students that a phys ed teacher sees across a semester, this is a lot of parents to talk to, a lot of students to interact with, a lot of preparation to do. These numbers take a different view when you look at it through that lens. Here's the enrollment again for our high school and plot of the data above, peaking at 1,551 at the 2023-24 school year. There are subgroups of populations of students that we always keep an eye on as it relates to their growth as a subgroup in our overall district, and we like to share our data on our SEL students, or our ELs, and also our students who are out of district. This is interesting data as it relates to our English language learner population. As you can see from the chart, we have continued increases in our enrollment. 54% in 13, 29% in 14, 12, 8, and then another big jump at 21% increase going from October 1, 16 to October 1 of 17. This group now makes up 7.5% of our student population. There are almost as many students in our district who are in IEPs as there are students who don't speak English as their first language. And we talked a little about this morning at our finance meeting, that this state mandated service has begun to build in its mandates from the state for reporting, for testing, for outcomes, for types of services provided, and it is becoming very much a sub-industry, as special education has, for not serving students. That's not the problem. The good part is serving the students. The difficult part is managing the bureaucracy of the state when it comes to reporting, testing. We just finished the testing a few weeks ago, and I believe it took
A whole month.
just to test all of our students in all of our buildings. So instead of teachers being in front of students, they're testing, reporting the data, bringing it back to the state, uploading it into their portals so they can give us feedback. There is now a very concerning amount of clerical and supervision work that's needed, that's similar to what we see in special education as far as demands from the state. So that's becoming a concern to us, not just do we have enough teachers to support this body of students, but do we have enough clerical support and/or supervision that's required and oversight required to make sure we're in compliance with the laws and with the expectations of the DESC. As you'll see in our budget, we did not provide ELL support at this point in time. We're going to wait to see how the numbers come in for next year before we tackle that. But there was discussion about whether or not we should provide some administrative support or a new director of sorts for that department only. And we just don't know if we have the funds for it for next year. We do know the demand is there, but we don't know if we have the funds for it. When we talk about the students who we have that were considered out of district, this is the chart of students that we have for this school year. We are staying at about 107 students as of February 1st. We provide you this list, which is last year's list, to just give the community a flavor of the the ups and downs of that enrollment that happen throughout the course of a year. We spend a lot of time talking about circuit breaker funding and other types of revenue sources that support this line. And want to thank the Finance Committee for supporting the guidelines that we're trying to work this budget through. We take all the revenue sources and we have created a 3-year plan, and we have been what I consider very successful in providing predictability and consistency in funding the needs of our students, which we think is really important moving forward, and we're thankful for that support of the school committee, and as you get ready to present this information to the warrant committee and the board of selectmen. This is a bar chart of that enrollment. As we can see, it continues to inch up. It is not a surprise that if we're growing by 120 or so students per year, that it shouldn't be a surprise that we're growing incrementally in this line of enrollment as well. So I finished 2 big sections. So before I go into the next section, we talked about our allocation of resources from 18 to 19. We talked about revenue and our per pupil expenditure as it relates to our neighboring towns in the state. And then we talked about enrollment and the continual impact of class size, enrollment, and space in the district. Are there any questions about the first 2 sections before I move on? This is my way of taking pause and making sure that everybody's still with me here. Should I get up and should we all stand up and walk around and come back to the tables? You're getting tired. I might have to stand up and do the third part standing. So, all right, so here we go. So the budget planning for 19 involves planning that's within the financial task force model, aligning our budget to our strategic plan, having objectives that we'd like to make sure that we work towards, and then talking about the primary cost drivers in the financial highlights. So, as always, we are working with the financial task force model, and we're trying to stay in line with that. That model was created 4 years ago by a substantial group of folks that were made up across the town, and Tony and I in the school district have been using that as a blueprint to allocate resources for the last 3 years, and we've extended that into fiscal 19 into fiscal 20. This continues by also aligning our work to our strategic plan that first of all talks about supporting social emotional learning in the achievement gap. It talks about our ability to combat class size and engage students in educationally beneficial programming, and also continue to review our class sizes in elementary assignments at the elementary level as we move into next year with our modules taking place at the Burbank. When we align our work to the strategic plan, we want to make sure that we let folks know that we are continuing our iPad instructional model. We always monitor our student services funding for the F19 budget for mandated costs. We have professional development in our budget, but we also get a lot of our professional development from the foundation. And we have developed a prioritized 3-year plan for our textbook adoption and our ebook adoption. When we look at our objectives, these are all rooted in our strategic plan, which is actually in the executive summary that we provided for you. These are basically our big picture goals of a rigorous and high quality education, maintain staffing levels that are commensurate with our increase in student enrollment, well-rounded education with extracurriculars funded, meeting existing contractual commitments, and always continuous improvement of our staff and professional development. Primary cost drivers, this is where we really want to kind of focus, and if I could ask everybody to think about, this is the meat of what we're asking for this year as it relates to the budget. We see the budget with strategic plan cost drivers and external cost drivers. Student enrollment is a strategic plan cost driver. We're averaging about 100 students a year over the last 5 years, and that's going to continue. So we need to begin to strategically plan around that pressure. The consistently increasing enrollment for multiple years has resulted in the need for professional and non-professional staff being increased, supports and services for mandated costs, and a certain level of purchases of materials and supplies to supply the needed technology, equipment, and textbooks for our students. External cost drivers are taking very much a position in this year's budget, especially as it relates to health insurance. Our health insurance costs for the town are going up, and that will have a significant cost to the district that you'll see in a few minutes. And we have continued our indexing of our special education budget lines for tuitions, transportation, and contracted services by the 7% index that has been supported by and originated at the financial task force process that we started with 3 years ago. So the highlights are that if we rolled forward our existing operations, plus we added the necessary costs to address the strategic plan, primarily to deal with enrollment, and we allocate funds for the external cost drivers like townwide insurance and special education, those make up the large chunks of our budget increase. So the good news is that if we just rolled our district forward, we would be asking for a 3.7% increase. That increase would exist of contractual increases for our staff, stipends and curriculum development and overtime for our staff, custodial and teacher and paraprofessional alike. Health insurance is a big number in this moving forward as well. That's a $222,000 rollover number. And our tuitions and transportation are indexed in the next piece. So just rolling our district over, the change is $1.9 million, but that only represents a 3.7% increase, which we think is in line with what most districts are asking for under normal circumstances. When we get to the other external impacts, we have to take into consideration the extraordinary growth in enrollment has required us to ask for 9 full-time equivalencies, 9 teachers, but that will be broken up into different part-time and full-time folks, but 9 full-time teacher salaries to address some of the needs that we have. First and foremost, those needs are at the elementary level. We are now getting ready to put modular classrooms at the elementary level. We have to staff those modular classrooms with teachers. After we staff the classrooms with teachers, we need the other types of support at the Burbank as it relates to guidance, special education, health, PE, music, art, etc. All those make up the other services that should be provided not only to the Burbank, but to some of the other schools as well. So we're looking at that being the driver of our need at the elementary level. The second piece of this large increase in teachers is 2 classroom teachers for the middle school at the 5th grade level. Again, that's the biggest cohort moving into that 5th grade level to reduce class size from about 27 down to maybe 24. So we'll have another team at the 5th grade level. We hope to be able to ask for a middle school administrator. Our middle school is over 1,400 students big, and we could use more support working with teachers, students, and families. And at the high school level, we are looking to have 2.5 teacher FTE allocations for the high school team to find out where the biggest needs are when students enrolled for their classes for next school year. They can begin to see where the class sizes will be high and what sections need to be increased. These 9 positions truly represent a portion of what we feel we need to continue to reduce the gap between what our enrollment is and what our staffing need is. We began by looking at maybe needing 15 teachers, then 12 teachers, and now 9. And we know this is a big ask at a time where the override money is actually beginning to come to an end, that stabilization money is available through the hard work of the town by being fiscally conservative. But we are responding to an external pressure that is enrollment that continues to increase at unprecedented levels over time, not just 1 year, but over time. Those positions combined with the health insurance for those positions and the text materials and supplies that we'd like to see in place to support our students and teachers at $109,000. This brings another $828,000 or another 1.6%. So the first stage of rolling the district forward was 3.7%. Dealing with enrollment essentially is another 1.6% that we are asking the town for to support the schools. The last external pressure that we have is health insurance. The town is letting us know that we should index our health insurance line in the budget by 11% to make sure we have enough funds to cover our obligation for health insurance. That 11% represents a $716,000 increase. If you add the $90,000 for the new staff and insurance as well, that becomes over $800,000 just in insurance alone that the district needs to be able to pay its bills. We also say out loud on this sheet that the external driver for the increases in special education that have been used historically at that 7% index, we put in this chart as well. So these 4 items make up a $1.2 million increase, which is another 2.3% increase. We break this down purposely to show everybody, and we're saying it out loud, that the first chart shows just if we rolled the district forward what this would be, and that our costs are staying in line. If we were staying enrollment neutral, our costs are staying in line. Our salaries are staying in line with the financial task force model. Our other aspects of our budget are staying in line with the task force model. When you fold in enrollment is when it really gets complicated, to the tune of 9 teachers needed to support our students and the increase of more students and needing more staff to keep that ratio of student to teacher appropriate, or as appropriate as we can. And then when you roll insurance indexes of 11% on top of that as an external force on this budget, that's where you get into this final figure, which is a 7.6% increase to the school budget from fiscal 18 to fiscal 19. So the categories on the left-hand side that we have provided are consistent with how we report our budget out. This is the FY18 budget. This is the roll forward number. These are the highlighted numbers that we showed in each one of the progressive charts that we presented to you tonight. This was the initial 3.7, 1.6, 2.3, ending with a 7.6% increase. These are very significant requests from the school department, especially in a time where the override funding has been exhausted, and there are some funds in a stabilization account to support years 4 and years 5. We're very respectful that this is a large ask, and we do so humbly and respectfully to the town, who have been very, very supportive of the district over the last 3 to 4 years. The next slide just gives us a pie chart of where that money is distributed. That this budget ask for fiscal 19 is $56,985,592. 49% of which is teacher salaries, which is the largest section that we see. A good amount of that is also 14% for special education tuition, transportation, and other expenses. 12% of that is student support staff and salaries, and fringe benefits. And the rest of these categories are smaller parts of the budget. When we look at the technical assumptions that we'd like to give to the school committee as well as the warrant committee, we are asking for a budget of 56 million plus. We are rolling forward all existing positions plus the 9 that we have asked for. We are indexing our budget by 11% per the town hall recommended index. We are indexing our special education lines by 7%, which is a financial task force model number that has been historically done over the last 4 years. We are assuming that our fiscal 19 grants from the federal and state government will be level funded. That's a big assumption given the turmoil at the federal level and what's happening with our Title I, Title IIA, and our IDEA grants. That could be actually less of a number. And that's also a concern as it relates to our state grants as well. But that's our assumption right now, and as we begin to make our projections for FY19. All of our user fees will remain the same in FY19. We are also making the assumption that our circuit breaker allocation will continue to be used strategically and in accordance with our school department multi-year plan. That is a plan that we've been talking about at length. That's at the Finance Committee level and at length with our Warrant Committee. And I think that people are really coming to understand how this complicated part of our budget can be broken down to the different revenue sources that we have, and that this allocation and expense is very unpredictable. And we've really created, through Tony's hard work, some really good projections for the next 3 years for revenue, projections for the next 3 years and expenses that are rooted in the last 5 years of revenue that we've experienced and allocation and expenses that we experienced. So we feel that we have a 3-year plan to make sure that we are in line in this line item that has been volatile in the past, that we think that we have a good handle on. Full-day kindergarten revolving accounts we will continue to use to offset portions of kindergarten teacher and aide salaries. And school building rental revolving funds that we receive each year will continue to be utilized to support the maintenance and repair of our school facilities through the facilities department. The reason why we bring these 3 assumptions to your attention is that these 3 categories represent the 3 biggest balances in our revolving accounts. So we know that folks are going to say, geez, you have some revolving accounts that have healthy balances, what do you use those for? We're saying really clearly and upfront and explicitly, we use them to offset expenses that happen throughout the budget, and we use them strategically, and we do this work at our finance meeting every other week to talk about the balances, how the money comes in, what the money is expended on, and how it supports the general fund budget for the Belmont Public Schools. Lastly, the next steps will be to say out loud that this is a draft 1 budget. We're not voting this budget tonight. The preliminary presentation provided the Finance Committee and the School Committee and the Education Subcommittee of the Warrant Committee. We did so last week on February 15th, or 2 weeks ago. A full presentation will be held tonight, which we just did, and we will be holding a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, the Warrant Committee, and the School Committee this Thursday night, March 1, believe it or not, 7 p.m. at Town Hall. If folks would like to see this presentation again and see it presented next to the town budget as well. We have been working with Town Hall, and this has come out in our finance meetings, that given the school committee and the school department has enjoyed 3 years of the override funds, the positions that we put in place over the 3 years, we had hoped would be classroom teachers and some technology, SEL, and other types of positions to enhance what we do. And we want to say out loud that those 3 years worth of positions have really all gone right to enrollment in the classroom. This year's enrollment was so high that we had to take the SEL and the 2 technology positions and turn them into grade 4, grade 1 in kindergarten, because we had to make sure that our class sizes stayed in line. We are thankful that we are able to get through these 3 years with predictable funding, and we're hoping that we can create a 2-year plan with Town Hall for fiscal 19 and 20 that shows that we can expend the money that the town is receiving in a responsible way over the next 2 years before we have to think very seriously about what fiscal 21 will look like, which we perceive to be the year that there could be a substantial deficit, because our revenue from the override will have been fully spent or expended at that time. So those are some big picture conversations that we've been having in finance as they relate to the fiscal 19 budget. We are very thankful to Patrice Garvin, our new town administrator, Floyd Carmen, Phyllis Marshall, Glenn Castro. We have been meeting since November to look at revenue projections, look at expense needs over time, and they have been very supportive of the school budget moving forward. And we fully recognize, when we presented this with the Warrant Committee present, and I believe Susan and Marat, and I think Kate was there that day, that they were very concerned that this was a large number that the schools was asking for. So we're fortunate to say that we believe that it's doable in the next 2 years with the budget plan that Patrice Garvin has at Town Hall, and we look forward to seeing what that budget looks like when we meet with them on Thursday night. So I know that was a lot. I appreciate everybody's patience. I've been talking a long time. Does anybody have any questions about the last 58 pages of slides?
47.
47?
Yes.
maybe just for the benefit of people watching, I know things are a little bit unpredictable at the federal level and the state level, but when would we know about those grants coming in?
Janice can speak to the timing.
Summer.
Not till summer.
They generally have some meetings in May, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but they usually don't have allocations until July.
And just a few years ago, we saw that when the state decided not to fund the full-day kindergarten grant, they did that on July 1st, which was the first day of the next fiscal year. So they didn't let the municipalities know until we were actually in the fiscal year that we had already budgeted for. So I think that we have good partners at the State House that are trying to work with our state budget. We have dialogued via email, and I have kept you aware of the circuit breaker concerns that are very much on the front burner of the School Superintendents Association, that any shift in circuit breaker could really be a big shift for the town of Belmont and probably every town. And we worry sometimes about those allocations because the way the state budget works is the Chapter 70 money is the money that's always on the front page of the newspaper. You get X amount, it's usually a percentage more than you got last year, and that's the one that everybody keeps an eye on. But no one really pays attention to the Medco grant that has gone down in the past, or the kindergarten grant that they actually just did not fund that was $126,000 that one year. And circuit breaker is another way to, if they funded just a few percentage points lower, that's tens of thousands of dollars to a district like Belmont. So we have been working together, and members of this committee have emailed Senator Brownsberger and State Representative Rogers, who have been great in responding to working on Beacon Hill to make sure that those types of reductions are, that the state is made aware that those are a concern to Belmont as well. Any other questions? Any critiques for Thursday night? Any suggestions? That would be a tougher audience.
Well, I do wonder when you do get that report back, if it would be significantly different from what the estimation is or projections are for the enrollments.
The PO was agreed to today. We did contact, and they're not going to do a full report. They're only going to do the grid over, which cut the cost down and the time down a lot. So I think they would like to. I think that we'd be able to have that by the March 13th meeting. Then is it March 13th the next meeting? March 13th meeting. And it was good to hear from our old friend David Kale, who emailed me this morning and said, I know you were having enrollment problems in Belmont when I left. Are you still having those problems? And can you give me the name of that demographer that we use? So I emailed him McKibben Associates, who we've been using quite regularly here in Belmont to keep track. So I think Cambridge is having some enrollment issues of their own. As you can see, they spend about $28,000 per child. We spend $13,000, so they might have a little more flexibility in their work over there. But it seems like there's going to be, if there are more than a few districts in the Boston metropolitan area that are in need of additional support student enrollment.
Questions or comments? All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So then we move to our subcommittee and liaison updates. Finance committee, obviously, met today. Anything else to share from this morning?
No, we just continued the discussion on the details of the budget from 2 weeks ago, covering some of the underlying cost drivers, and Superintendent Phelan just gave us a preview of the presentation that we just received, so we had an opportunity to see the 47 pages twice today.
Congratulations.
Policy subcommittee?
We are meeting on March 6th at 8:30 to discuss the after-school care, school start times, and then other policy issues.
Curriculum and instruction subcommittee, we're looking for a date, correct, in a couple weeks. Capital budget.
Our next meeting is March 8th at 8 o'clock in the morning.
warrant committee meets tomorrow, and then again with us on Thursday in our joint meeting with the selectmen. High school building committee, anything?
We had our weekly Tuesday meeting. We are preparing for our first steering committee meeting with our teachers, which will be next Wednesday. We will be meeting every other Wednesday with Belmont educators in grades 7 through 12 for the purpose of steering the work of the new programming at Belmont High School in the 7 through 12 building. Everything from how the 7 through 12 line will be drawn to what the science department could look like to how students will be getting in and out, the learning commons. So there's a lot of agenda items that will be discussed, some of which will be discussed by just Belmont educators and some of which will be discussed with the design team. So I know next week that the design team wants to come in and put a few subjects on the table for the group to consider. And I do know that the group has some items that they want to put on the table. So we'll create an agenda for the next few meetings as we go through now until the end of May, early June. We are preparing the next phase of the work, and we will go in front of the MSBA in March, and then we'll go back in front of the MSBA again in April. So the work continues.
All right, thank you. The community path, anything related to the community path?
No.
Library long-range planning committee. Actually, speaking of library, I just want to mention the events happening this weekend at the library. I forgot to mention the Books in Bloom, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's a whole bunch of events happening. So, consent agenda. We have a couple of donations, happily, to acknowledge and accept. So let's see, the first one from the Butler PTA. So this was for the purchase of Chromebooks, I believe Exhibit D. Questions? All right, so then just we need to vote to accept. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
Second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, second one then, Exhibit E. A donation from David and Sita Bertner. And any questions with regard to this one? All right, motion to accept this one as well?
Motion.
Oh, yeah.
So just to update the public, we are always thankful when we get donations from, whether it be PTO or a foundation or the boosters, or we actually get donations from individuals who will just come in and drop off checks for $100 to $800. And so I want to thank Kathy and Tony, because we're really trying to not only acknowledge with letters, which is what you see here, but also make sure that we're transparently showing the public that we do get these donations, that they do go into a gift account, and we do expend them on the topic or the area in which the donor would like to see the money put towards. So thank you to Kathy Grant, who's taking our minutes and does this at the office, and thank you for Tony for keeping track and allocating the money to the expenses that they've done. And thank you to the folks who donate. We've had more than a few of these this year, and it's really been refreshing, and we're very thankful for the commitment to the community to do so.
Did we get the
Mark
motion?
gave a motion, yep.
Second?
Kate.
Thank you. All those in favor then?
Aye.
All right, so then the last item will be an approval of minutes. February 6th meeting prior to break. Any questions? I was not present, so I will be abstaining.
I don't have any comments.
Can we vote on this?
Yeah.
Oh, quorum from that night, you mean?
Forward,
Do we?
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, we're on.
Yeah, right, so, no, that's true.
So we'll have to wait.
Lisa, I'm sorry, just going back to the acceptance of the Burbank PTA. I just realized that my family was one of the donors. I wonder if that means I should not vote on it. I'm not sure if it's an issue or not.
As part of the PTA.
It was Butler too.
The Butler.
It was Butler.
It was
Yeah.
Butler.
No, we did
It was
Butler.
Butler
It was
PTA.
Butler.
The Burbank was individuals.
Individuals.
Okay, great.
And not from the PTA.
Should I not have voted?
I
I don't think it really,
Yeah, I don't.
You didn't receive anything, I don't
No.
think.
No,
So-
you
my
just provided
students
a
will
donation.
use
Yeah.
whatever, but the PTA
Yeah.
decided.
I don't think there's a conflict with that.
Okay.
It's a good
And
question.
thank you for the donation.
All right. So then before we wrap up, we're going to be transitioning into an executive session. So we have a few upcoming meetings that are noted on our agendas on the back. March 13th will be our next finance subcommittee meeting at 7:30 a.m., followed by our school committee meeting less than 12 hours later. Just to make sure I get the language correct, we will be moving into an executive session to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining sessions with non-union personnel. The school committee will not return to open session. So let's just do a roll call vote to return here and transition into that session. Fiore, aye.
Burgess Cox, aye.
Bowen, aye.
Prestwich, aye.
Future, aye.
Thank you, everyone.